Hail, fellow countrymen. We are ready to begin our quest.
Tell about when you first met Chris Jones.
Well, that would have been when I was 7 years old, and I moved into the neighborhood. And my first day at school, it was a little elementary school. So I sat down there and nervous. I think school had already been going for about a month when I moved in. The first kid in the classroom was this immensely tall kid. I was probably the shortest kid in the class. This big monster of a kid came up to me, and he looked down at me. He was the first one in the class. He said, "What are you doing in here? You're not supposed to be in here. You're not in my class." Well, that was Chris Jones. That was back when we were 7 years old, and we've been friends ever since.
I always loved movies. I always loved stories, things like that. And my cousin Dave Brown got a movie camera, and it was like, well, why don't we make movies? That would be fun. We can do that for the summer. It's boring. Don't have anything else to do. So in essence, that's where Carp Studios originated, was the fact that Dave got a camera, he figured out how to use it, and the rest of us said, "Hey, we can come up with a script or something. Let's give it a shot."
We did our own version of Batman, we did Tarzan, Mission Impossible. We were taking all the pop culture movies of the day and lampooning them.
It was after college that we all worked at a chemical engineering company. Chris, Doug, and Bruce Carver were all there.
Yeah, Bruce was a guy who kind of shared some of my same interests. On weekends, we used to hang out playing in television or Atari.
Bruce was kind of like the computer guy. So when the Commodore came out, he bought one because he thought, this is great. But there was no software anywhere. So he started making games for his kids to play. And that was the beginning of Access Software.
Bruce developed a program called Sprite Master, which allowed you to move objects on the screen, and that turned out to be actually very popular. And then we came out with another product, kind of a D-Day game. It was called Beachhead, and Beachhead did incredibly well for us, and that's when the company had enough of a base to go on its own.
I had always helped them from day one, and I would just do it on the side. I would paint their box art, help them out wherever I could. Well, they started getting so big so quickly that they really needed me full time.
I knew Doug and Chris from college, and Doug called me just kind of out of the blue one day and said, "Hey, you want to come and work on these computer games with us up here in Bountiful?" My wife was a little concerned. She says, let's make sure these guys are for real. We looked into it, and I mentioned it to a friend of mine who had a Commodore 64, and I mentioned Access and Bruce Carver, and he says, "Oh, these guys are the top of the, they're the very best. Best there are." And so I said, okay, we're there.
Something that I always wanted to do, which was incorporate movie elements inside of the video game world.
Chris and I always still reminisced about how fun it was to make those old backyard movies and stuff. So we decided, let's make another one. What would even be greater is if we could actually make it on 16 millimeters. So maybe even submit it to the Sundance Film Festival. We had so much hopes and everything like that. At that time, I had discovered a little cassette tape of Roy Rogers singing songs. So I'd be listening to these Roy Rogers songs when Chris would come into my office and go, "What are you listening to that Roy Rogers stuff for?" And then that was about the same time that we decided to write this script. And then Chris said, "Well, why don't we make it about a private eye?" And then I'd say, "Well, why don't we make it about a private eye that likes to listen to Roy Rogers music? So maybe he's like a cowboy or a wannabe cowboy. Why don't we call him Tex?" And then I'd sit down and start taking his ideas and start writing out things like, well, blonde woman came into my office and what's the blonde woman's name? And I would just, Sylvia Linsky, you know, I just come create these names.
Are you Tex Murphy?
Yeah, that's right. I'm Tex. Why don't you come in?
Thank you, Mr. Murphy.
Have a seat, Miss.
Linsky, Sylvia Linsky.
We finished the script, thought it was funny, thought it was great. Chris and I, we decided, well, who's going to play what part? And Chris said, well, you're more of a character actor than me, so why don't you play all the little parts, and I'll just play the straight guy, I'll just play Tex. Sometimes I think that had we decided just the opposite, I'd be Tex. We started filming the movie. Then it quickly became a fiasco. Cameras started breaking, film didn't go through the gate right. We started changing formats, and somebody stole our 16 camera, going to Super 8. We decided maybe we should go to video because people started having home video cameras by then. It made no sense. We decided, well, the only thing we're going to do with this thing is just show it at the office. And Chris said, why don't we take that idea that we had based on the Plan 10 and make that into a game? So with a very small crew, we did that very first Mean Streets game. Because both John and I came from a theatrical background where we would design theatrical sets. We thought, wouldn't it be great if we built a little 3D model? So we actually started building models, and then we would just photograph it with a camera, and then using the photograph, we could then, it was a much easier process of digitizing it. We felt like it was like cutting edge for the market at the time. And we won awards for best graphics in games and stuff early on, which was really fun.
The animation for Tex, when I think it's Mean Streets, and there's this little animation of Tex walking around sideways, oblique, and forward and backwards, toward and away from you. We went and shot Chris on a treadmill, and we just set up a strobe and took the camera, and I'd watch him, and I'd just get the cycle of his walking. So when his foot hit the treadmill, I'd shoot a picture, and then the next time around, I'd wait until his foot was back here, and I'd shoot. Wait until it was up here, and I'd shoot. And then I'd wait until it was up here, and I'd shoot. And so we got this walk cycle out of Chris on a treadmill, and then every frame of that, again, I think it was an 8-frame walk cycle. We put it on this backlit glass, put the video camera, do this process to get each step of each walk cycle.
We followed that product with a product called Countdown, and that was a game that really enjoyed making, but it wasn't as successful as the Mean Streets game. For that private eye type of game seemed to resonate with a lot of people. So after we had done Countdown, we came back and did Martian Memorandum, which was the sequel to Mean Streets.
A new computer game developed in Salt Lake City is being hailed by a top industry publication as a quantum leap forward.
The Access software company has developed a new method of squeezing and storing computer information to make a game that's more realistic and very possibly more fun.
The game is just now being packaged for distributors, but computer magazines are already buzzing because Martian Memorandum is breaking new ground.
After we did Martian Memorandum, we needed someone who could write seriously for a lot of characters, and that's when Aaron really got involved.
So I wrote the story for Under Killing Moon, And then as it turned out, because I always loved games, growing up I made board games. My background was all in game design. That was a thing I loved. I had a knack for it, and after a little while, Chris said, hey, do you want to be the designer with me on this too? And that was it. The approach that Chris had used on Mean Streets of Martian was more of a Blade Runner approach, and it was a little more straightforward science fiction. And as I got to know Chris, I realized that he and I had a real passion for film noir, which really wasn't at all part of the first two games, outside of the way the Blade Runner does film noir. So I said, well, what would you think about us like making a really retro? Chris was like, yeah, let's do it. So I felt it was important that Tex have a backstory. So we took Sylvia Linsky, who was part of Mean Streets, and made her his ex-wife. And then took some of the other recurring characters just to have something to kind of build off. And we took The Office and made it, kind of adapted it for the 3D environment, but it was based on what had been a Martian Memorandum. And so we thought like creating this mythology of Tex and tying into the previous games, but not making it completely based on those was a good way to kind of start. And then, a lot of people consider Underkilling Moon kind of the real first game where we get to know who Tex is. But yeah, that whole part of developing the background for Tex was a big thing for me.
At all our early games, we would just grab somebody in the office and say, here, we're gonna make you up, and you're gonna be this crazy person. And everybody had great fun doing it. Nobody took the acting serious in those early games. It never occurred to us to hire Hollywood people. There was somebody that Kevin Jones knew, who was Chris's brother, who was in the business of casting movies, Katrine McGregor. And she said, if you guys want to hire Hollywood actors, I can arrange that. And we really didn't take it seriously until one day she called up and said, I've got Margot Kidder. She's got to go to the airport in 3 hours. She's sitting in Salt Lake doing nothing. If you'd like for her to come, you got her for 3 hours. Erin, they had really quickly started writing something. She showed up at a certain time. She had great fun doing it. And then shortly after that, we thought, well, if we can get her, maybe we can get somebody else. Before we knew it, there was Brian Keith had come in for the day.
Because apparently you never learned the first rule of a PI. Never, ever betray your friends. Now, friendship goes beyond blood and race and politics. You got to find out who your friends are, then you hold on to them.
And I remember he was a little bit apprehensive and a bit grouchy.
We got a few conversations before we need him to walk. 182?
I ain't walking nowhere.
What the hell is this? My God, I've been in bigger studios in New York and stuff like that, so.
Yeah, I remember, I think it was probably the first time anyone ever dropped an F-bomb during a shoot of one of our games.
Good.
Like that, fucker.
I'm telling you, it's impossible. It can't be done. I've tried everything.
Russell Means was a really interesting dude.
He accepted, the role and everything we were doing in a good, lighthearted way.
Let's do it one more time.
So we were late in the development of the game, and we felt like we wanted to have narration. So Chris had come back and said, what'd you think about we do this Edgar Allan Poe thing? And I was like, sure. And so he goes, but we need someone to, really narrate. I said, who should we get is James Earl Jones. We all went, ha, 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 ha. No, we should check it out. So we found out who his agent was and got in touch with him. They contacted him. Turned out his son had been following the development of our game and was so excited. He's like, Dad, you got to do this. And so we wrote up a script, and he was in a studio in LA, and we were in our studio here in Salt Lake. And we had taken the script, and we had changed the margins and everything to pack as much stuff as we could, because we told him we got 2 pages of stuff, right? So we had 8 pages of stuff on 2 pages. And he ended up doing it all for us, and he was just amazing.
No pestilence has ever been so fatal or so hideous. Blood was its avatar and its seal, the redness and horror of blood.
Yes, so Chelsea, it's kind of interesting because when I first wrote her character, I just wanted her to be this bright sunshine on this really dark street. So we knew when we created the game, we had a lot of technical limitations, and so we couldn't do dynamic lighting and things like that. And we decided it was more noirish to just keep it dark. And so that kind of led to the whole idea of the story of the day-night reversal, with the radiation. And so that's why everyone's out at night. And I wanted her to just be the source of sunshine there. And it wasn't that she was going to be a love interest. That wasn't the intention initially. Chris wasn't even there when we filmed his scenes with Chelsea. And yet somehow just the way the characters were written and then the performances of the characters, people felt like they had this awesome chemistry, which turned out to be true. When we started filming them together, they just immediately clicked. And so she was meant to be one thing and then turned into something much deeper, just I think in part because of Suzanne's performance, which was so good.
The information superhighway is speeding up a little as CD-ROM technology takes a few well-known names from the big screen to computers. The new film, Under a Killing Moon, shows how the Silicon Valley is helping to create a whole new realm of entertainment.
I think what was so fascinating about the whole thing is the technology was evolving as we were doing it. You know, you start out with this kind of vision of what you think you can pull off, and then as you go and you see the quality of the graphics for the time were just unbelievable, and then some of the performances, you start seeing so many of the lines delivered and you think, you know, that's really funny or it's very poignant, and so you see that it's working at the level that you want it to work at. The characters are really starting to come through. The locations feel real. And so I think just the experience of going through that and seeing the evolution of the technology while we were doing it and what we could pull off, that was very exciting.
We made it up as we went along. I think all of us, from the programmers up, it was just all about anything we can think of, let's see if we can make this happen.
We were this kind of emerging technology and everybody was fascinated by it. And I think because the technology wasn't quite where it needed to be, you know, there were some hardcore, quote unquote, expecting it to be a movie, you know, with all the production values of a $100 million movie. It's like, well, it's not up to that level. Well, yeah, it isn't up to that level. That's, you know, that's where we would like to get. But I think from the press, the reception was very good.
Everything was like the frontier, right? And people were just making it up as they went along. And there wasn't this sense of professionalism, you know? It was still kind of really rough and homemade. And it wasn't until, I mean, it was really kind of Under a Killing Moon and a couple of games that came out around that time that got Hollywood's attention. And then all of a sudden it was about bringing in directors and real actors. And then when we did it, and we did Under a Killing Moon, and we found out how much people got into the full motion video and the immersive world, we're like, oh, we should probably step it up. And so at that point, we started really thinking about bringing in people who could really act.
For many years, I was a research scientist, and I worked alongside Dr. Malloy. But about 20 years ago, maybe, I guess something like that, our paths diverged, and I lost touch with him, and he with me.
No. In my business, there are always these little untidy loose ends.
A weather balloon? It was no damn weather balloon. It was a spacecraft.
I started working for the ABC, the Australian Broadcasting Commission, in the mailroom, and I always kept applying for assistant cine cameraman, could never get the gig. And there was one for an assistant editor, and I applied for that. I got it. I moved into the editing realm and ultimately became one of Australia's top editors. In '92, I moved to America, where I directed the pilot and the first few episodes of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. And from there, did some more television work, a couple of indie films. But around 1994, that was when I was introduced to Tex Murphy.
He really, you know, took us to a new level as far as the cinematics and the visuals and things like that. And he, in the context of it being kind of a movie, I think he really, really helped us with that.
By bringing Adrian on later, that made a significant difference in terms of our ability to have more drama and more emotion and more realism to what we were doing.
We'd already had some elements of Under a Killing Moon that had some darkness to them. And with Pandora, I wanted to explore that further because I love it when comedy plays against that dark side. And so we definitely went from being more Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid and Under a Killing Moon, where it was really a comedy. We really wanted to play it for laughs. And then we went to Pandora, which became much more Indiana Jones.
I hope you don't mind. The door was open.
Well, I hope I didn't keep you waiting too long.
Tighter Arms was awesome. She was just so much fun, gorgeous, just really lit up the set. I wanted to introduce this love triangle thing. The trick is to try and create two female characters that were equally appealing. That was really kind of what we built the whole story off, was just creating that dynamic between the three of them. And I felt like the fact that that isn't what the story was about, but that it gave some structure to the experience was really fun.
You know, I am not in the habit of eavesdropping, but I do believe I heard someone say that you were a private detective.
I loved Kevin McCarthy. I've talked a lot on the forums and stuff about the opportunities I had to get to know him and stuff. But what he brought to our game was this level of professionalism and like history as an actor that we'd never really had before. And he just had this air about him that just was amazing. It was like the first time I really felt like we were doing a movie.
Enough! Enough, enough, enough.
I just want to make sure you gave Murphy all the information he needs. I'm on his side.
Barry Corbin was terrible at remembering his lines, but he knew the character. And that was the key for him, was that I know who this guy is, and so I know where I need to get. I know where the scene is going to end, but sometimes he would get so far out in the weeds with the dialogue.
Welcome, Mr. Cross. Please make yourself comfortable.
That's okay, Mr. Murphy. Nice to meet you, too.
Oh, welcome, Mr. Murphy.
And yet he would almost always be able to pull it back in, and he never broke character, ever.
You know, you look tired, Archie. You look like you can stand a little vacation.
No, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Really?
Yeah.
You don't look fine. You don't look fine at all.
Dr. Thomas Malloy, I presume.
You're NSA, aren't you?
No, sir, I'm not NSA. My name's Tex Murphy, and I'm a private investigator. I was hired by a friend of yours.
I don't have any friends, Mr. Murphy.
John Agar, he was in his late 70s or mid 70s when he shot Pandora Directive. He is the consummate pro. He came up in the John Ford era, and everything was yes sir, no sir. If he flubbed a line, oh sir, I'm so sorry. And it was so hard to convince him not to say sir, just call me Adrian or Aid. That was a mark of respect that I think has been lost in a lot of the filmmaking today.
And I have to say, he probably was the biggest champ out of all of them when he took that gunshot load to the chest. That was awesome. I mean, that was something that was tough for a guy his age and his condition, but he was a champ.
Action. 1, 2, 3. Cut.
Well, I think for Pandora, that was the first one that basically met the dream. You know, we were going to have a multi-paths that made sense. There was going to be, reasons for the choices that you made. They're going to have different outcomes. So the unfortunate part of that is after we had come out with Under a Killing Moon and even during that time, there were so many bad video games that tried to implement these things and did things much worse. We were trying to evolve what we were doing, but a lot of them were done so poorly that it basically put a stain on this quote-unquote interactive movie. And by the time Pandora came out, which I thought met the bar on so many levels, a lot of it, the industry had dissed so much this type of production that, Pandora really had a hard time making its case.
This is DVD. Watch a movie right on your computer. DVD. See how good a movie at home can be.
Intel came to us and said, we really want to promote DVDs now for being the media source for games and whatever. Would you guys consider doing that? We'll fund a lot of that if you would. One thing that we would always push at Access was new technology, and if DVD technology was going to be the way of the future, we would like to be, part of that.
Chris came to me and said, okay, we have a chance to have someone basically pay for development on our next game. Unfortunately, they need the game in like 9 months or something. And I was like, are you serious? And he was like, oh, it'll be a small game, really small. And it's going to save a lot of time because we're just going to redo Mean Streets. And the story's already done, so we can just redo it. And so I had never actually played Mean Streets. And so I went back and played it. And I went to him and I said, we can't redo this game. This is terrible, And it was just so funny. I'm like, you've got more jokes from like 3rd grade in here than I've ever seen in a game. I mean, so what I took was the basic thread of the story and kind of rewrote everything around that. And it really rewrote the script kind of from top to bottom. And so when people say Overseer was just a redo of Mean Streets, I just want to throttle them because I worked harder on that than I did on Pandora because I had to keep so much stuff and then do a bunch of new things, to make it work. So
it was the beginning of the end. There are no heroes anymore. Only villains of varying degrees.
When Aaron created the character Jason Gideon, we wanted to bring up an actor that had the gravitas that could to bring this character to reality. I suggested Michael York. I knew we could get to him, but the script at the point it wouldn't have been enough to attract him, an actor of his caliber, to the role. So Aaron then fleshed it out and developed the character and wrote an incredible monologue that any actor would give their back teeth to do. We then submitted it to Michael. Then he came out to Salt Lake for 2 days.
it was so perfect because I'd written his character to be very kind of a Shakespearean type tragic character, kind of a King Lear type. And it was so awesome because one time we were on the set and he was chatting to me and he goes, this feels very Shakespearean to me. And I was like, oh God, thank you.
Sold out any fellow PIs lately?
Well, now that you bring it up, how is the Colonel doing anyway?
That was the thing about Overseer, I think, that really distinguished it beyond the other games, is how professional the actors were. When they came in, they knew their dialogue backwards and forwards, and we didn't waste the time that we had in the previous games with take after take until we got what we wanted. And then Adrian didn't have to spend hours and hours in the editing room to cobble together the performance.
I hope you don't mind me saying this, but you are good. You are very, very good. You give lessons?
Oh, yeah. Matter of fact, this one's on me.
All I knew is that he was Adrian's friend from Australia. And I was like, yeah, whatever, as long as he can act, that's great. And when he showed up, he just was such a pleasant surprise. And he just brought such a level of charm to the character that honestly, I hadn't really focused on when I wrote the character. There were some little funny lines that he had, but I saw him as being more straight menacing. And he did it with such kind of a charm to it that it made him kind of even more dangerous and yet super attractive,
That was close. I was beginning to wonder how we were going to get out of this. Don't stop wondering on my account.
Well, 5 would be nice here.
Are you the private investigator?
So Rebecca Broussard was awesome. I just thought she was so amazing. I had a total crush on her. And she called me Word Man, and she always wanted to talk about the scripts and stuff. And when you contrasted her with Chelsea, there was such a difference in the characters, and it helped to accentuate Tex's arc between where he was as this idiot, naive young guy to this idiot, naive older guy.
Who's your mate?
Oh, that's Tex. He's having a very bad day.
That true, Tex?
Oh no, everything's just going peachy.
Well, things could get worse, sir.
We'd had pretty good success. We were a successful mid-sized company. But when that happens, basically you get the big players and they're looking to just get bigger and take space. It becomes more and more difficult to compete against guys like Microsoft or Electronic Arts or whatever, the guys who are just becoming monsters in the industry because they've got, you know, the money, they're public companies, and they want to control the space. And so as time goes on, you find it gets tougher and tougher to compete with these guys. And that was the hardcore realization. Yeah, we love what we're doing, but this industry is changing in a significant way, and it is now maturing. If you play too long inside that world and you don't make the adjustments when you need to make them, you can find yourself, you know, one day coming up and the world has completely changed and there is no business and there is no opportunity for you anymore because the big guys have taken it all away. If we were going to go with someone, then Microsoft was probably a good way to go, and that's the conclusion we came to.
Suddenly, I'm working for a big corporation where you just couldn't make willy-nilly decisions really fast. It had to be in sort of corporate structure, and we were all thinking that we were going to continue the Tex Murphy franchise, but that wasn't the case.
We tried it at Microsoft. We talked to a couple of other groups about it, but they still came up against the same wall. It's not really an Xbox product. It's way too big for casual gaming. We don't, you know, and adventure games have taken their hit and have basically died off, and so we don't see where you fit.
Yeah, it was just kind of a really unsatisfying time creatively. And, you know, Chris and I think our friendship increased actually because we felt like we were the only two people that were holding this, you know, this precious little seed of Tex Murphy, you know, as the last living thing on the planet, you know, and we'd talk about all the things we wanted to do to bring it back and just could never get anything to go. I kind of gave up at that point and said, you know what, if we can do it, that'll be great, and I'd love to come back and try it, but I got to move on. And so Chris really went into True Golf, and I left and worked on AMP3 and then went to work for Ubisoft and did a bunch of other stuff. And so, yeah, it wasn't really until we, came back and figured out how we could actually make it work that we started exploring the possibility, and then it really wasn't until Kickstarter that it became a reality. So.
Chris Cole, is it? What do you know about this Kickstarter crowdfunding thing?
And first it was just such an abstract concept of people, they send in money and they just want you to build a game, and you know, that's how it works. And it was like, that doesn't seem possible. It was like, well, you know, maybe we could pull this off. Maybe this would work.
You know, Kickstarter's actually a pretty darn good idea.
Hey everybody, Chris Jones here. We've had a fantastic first week on Kickstarter. Reach 4,500 backers by June 6th. Well, Big Finish Games will not negotiate with terrorists. Every time we raise $6,000, one high donor will put in $4,000 to the Kickstarter fund. We are over 2/3 the way to our goal. Keep the pedal to the metal, and we can really pull this off. This last 3 weeks has been amazing to see the support of Tex Murphy. Let me tell you something. Your dreams and desires may just come true. Aaron and I know you guys are the reason this campaign has achieved so much, so kudos to you all.
There was still this community out there who was saying, you know, we love this character, we want a game like this, and so it kind of kept hope alive.
Without them, we wouldn't have done this because Chris and I would have just said, you know, who's even going to be interested in this? But there was always this really loyal, supportive group that we knew would be there for this, and it would be such an amazing thing for them. And so,
Working on Tesla Effect was like coming home. It had been, I think, about 16 years since we did Overseer, and one has trepidations. You know, we're a little bit older, and and will you be able to connect right back into the Tex vibe, so there's no continuity issues? You have this sort of fear that you're not going to get right back into the Tex vibe again. And 2 minutes on set, and we were back. It was like nothing had ever changed. It could have been the next day from Overseer, just moving on to the next day. And Chris was right back as Tex.
I just met this girl. I'm gonna give her a try, but if it doesn't work out, you're the first one I'm gonna call. I mean, we immediately jumped in, so we couldn't waste any time, we couldn't waste any money. We had to, just basically attack it and go after it with a smaller staff and get things rolling right off. It was very hectic, it was very crazy.
I gotta tell you, I was really surprised to hear that Chris wasn't a professional actor. Yeah, man, he's got the vibe down, kind of the bitter, sarcastic retorts.
Chris is as fine an actor as you're going to find.
He may not have any formal training, but he knows how to tell a story, and that's really all you have to do.
I think it's going to take him a while to recover from me.
These guys are great. I mean, we're having to get through chunks of material, and it's a real testament to the professionalism of everybody in there, the crew and everyone.
He's trusting us enough to put our spin on it, as long as our spin on it goes along with what he needs it to do. I mean, it's collaborative, it's great.
When we started the physical production side of things, we had visitors to the set, backers who had donated to the high level, and one of those perks was visiting the set and getting to meet Chris and the crew. And I think it was day 2, the backers who were there said, "Oh, I can help out with that. I've done a little bit of this," or "I don't know what it is, but I'll chip in if I can help." And that's how they gradually started to become part of the crew. And over the course of the 3 or 4 weeks we filmed, they knew how to handle grip equipment, cameras, focus pulling, slating, helping with lighting. It was amazing. And the truth be told, we couldn't have done it without them.
Every backer that came through, now, Okinawa, where are you from? Oh, you came all the way from there here? And when did you first play Tex Murphy? So I enjoyed talking to them as hopefully as much as they enjoyed talking to me.
But this was a massive game, with hours and hours of video and hours and hours of gameplay. I mean, when it came out, it was nearly as big as Pandora, and so it's just an amazing achievement. But I think the thing that hit me was how dedicated everyone was to completing this, because frankly, there were times I'm just going, wow, this was way too much to bite off. We are nuts trying to build something this size. Just because of the size and the scale, if people weren't absolutely dedicated to it, I don't know whether we'd ever finish. But that goes right down to, the backers coming in and helping us shoot it, and the actors who had been on our other games before, here they are showing up 15, 16, 17 years later, and they're involved with it and they're excited about it. So there was an energy that would be hard to duplicate, frankly, without the dedication of the backers, without the support of the people around here, without the people who created this. I don't think we would have ever finished. So it's just an amazing effort.
It's fascinating how fandom keeps these things alive, and if not for the fans, these things would never have been rebooted. And it's just a great, humbling thing that people absorb themselves emotionally into these characters, into that whole genre and the Tex Murphy games.
One of the things that we kind of found interesting all the way through, from Brian Keith, who I think was the first actor, kind of name actor we ever brought in, all the way through the years we were doing this, is they would come in and they'd look around at this kludged together studio that we were working in, especially at the beginning. you know, some black fabric hung on the walls in an office. And you could tell that they were just, oh, what have I got myself into? And by the end of the day, when it was time for them to go, they didn't want to leave. They'd sit around, we'd talk. It's like, I feel like we made a lot of friends doing these games. And I think it's because the atmosphere was kind of laid back, and it was, I think they all kind of got a chance to go, oh yeah, I used to do this because it was fun. You know, I remember when I used to be a young, energetic, you know, I'd do anything for just to do it, to see if I could make it happen.
I grew up in Australia, in Melbourne, and
Oh, this is Peter Lorre.
This was back in 1991. I was actually 9 years old, and they paid me 85 cents an hour.
Seriously?
Yes. Yes, he's doubled that since then, so I'm making well over $1 an hour now.
Pods? 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 I hate pods!
You know, I love him. Who'd he play?
Anyway, back to the story. So, what was my story?
Okay.
I'm gonna need my therapist in here for this. So I haven't resolved all those issues.
So we can see you.
Young Jedi Knight.
Yes, I was doing a little bit.
First of all, let me take out these attractive teeth, which you may notice have been held in here all day by chewing gum.
I am the translator. What do you want to know?
I'm sitting in a big leather chair smoking a cigar. There are pretty women there. You know, so it's been a pretty good day, all told.
See, this is where we can swear, but I won't swear because I'm a lady.
Good to go.
I was going to wear the same thing this morning. I'm so glad I didn't.
We would have clapped.
I have not done green screen. Look, this is the end of the day, people. I'm tongue-tied.
You start off sounding like a normal human being. You put the teeth in. You hold them in like this. And then you kind of go with, you know, the Bugs Bunny kind of accent, and suddenly Louis lives.
So the mask is glued on by double-stick Scotch tape. It's high-tech. I don't think I've ever worked with an actor in LA that tall. Because they're all really short.
I can't wait to see how it comes out.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Have you gone mad? Stop that!
I wanted to do this.
From the Tex Murphy community. Oh, we're ready. The talent is on set.
I'm not good at this. After the no, I looked right at the camera, I'm sorry.
Here?
Destroy the tape now.
You want to ask him?
I don't know how to begin this. Chris, Doug, and I.
In your own words?
I'm at that phase of life where I don't remember where I parked the car anymore. Well, what really happened?